If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
Blah blah blah, blah blah.
Sending out good vibes,
Blah blah
good vibes,
blah,
good vibes,
blah blah.
good vibes, good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection, and put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track, shivers or vibrations and stuff like that.
Grimerica.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica Show. Coming at you on Monday with Michael Le Flem, Atlantis. We're going back to Atlantis. Of course, not with Randall Carlson this time, but they do seem to agree on some stuff. So we're going to go back to the Azores, poke around for Atlantis with Michael Le Flem, and see what. And I might try and get this guy and Randall on the same show down the road and see
Oh yeah,
what make happens. We could do some like real Atlantis roundtables, you know. We'll get Peter in the mix and just let him fucking tear him up.
yeah. Peter wants to come back on too, and
Enigma Seeker.
yeah, and he this book of his, Visions of Atlantis, Reclaiming Our Lost Ancient Legacy, is pretty cool. It's because it's more than Atlantis, you know, but it also includes all the detailed visions, and we talk about that book that was The Dweller on Two Planets, which was kind of like an early sci-fi kind of Star Wars thing that was channeled by a young kid that seemed to correlate with some of Atlantis and Donnelly stuff and Plato and Edgar Cayce. We get into all that. It's really, really quite fascinating.
It's a good one.
Yeah. And this is just our rambling little intro. You can skip forward to the interview, but this is where we got to talk about some important stuff this week to let everybody know what's going on. What were you saying?
Well, I gotta give a shout out to
Paul.
To Paul, yeah, I think it's Sir Scandinavia, right?
Yeah, I think so. Sir Scandinavia. Yeah.
Anyway, he helped us out with a nice envelope full of cash, which really helped in these dire times. And I mean, over and above that, he put me and Shauna and Cassandra were up in Jasper for a couple of days, stayed at his place. He was out of town and he borrowed his boat, went fishing, went for a nice boat tour. So it was a magnificent little weekend. Seen some huge elk. I mean, it really was great. The missus had a great time. Cassandra had a great time. And it was all thanks to Paul. So, you know, I had like 16, 17-hour days every day last week trying to figure out the audiobook fiasco and then ping-ponging that off of hunting and dragging shit out of the bush, which sounds like fun. And it is a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. You know, it's my favorite thing to do, but it's still a lot of fucking work. So it was nice to just go to Jasper and just relax for a couple
Chill
days.
out for a bit. Did you take the Icefields Parkway?
I did. I took that there, and then on the way back, I came halfway down that and cut out and came through Rocky Mountain House and all that.
Oh yeah.
So that I could because there's some prime hunting ground out there. I've been wanting to scope out for a while, but it's a few hours from here to drive out and just go scoping. So
yeah,
there's some nice land up there. There's entire fucking units of just public land where there's probably giant elk.
Wow.
Which start rutting in like a week. To 10 days.
What is the rutting again for people that aren't hunters?
I can call them in with my call and then shoot them with my bow.
They don't fall for your call, do they?
Dude, when they're horny, that's when you get them.
That's what the rutting is?
That's what the rutting is. Those things only fuck for like a few months a year, and then they just, you know, that's it. So they get it on. And they get stupid, just like us when we're horny. So, yeah, shout out. Thanks, Paul. It was great. Great little trip. So what did you do? It wasn't a long weekend. It was a regular weekend.
I was trying to work on the audiobook thing while you're gone. So I was doing that mainly.
Change the
and
title.
get ready to move. I mean, I'm going to be moving. Everything is changing in life right now. So we're trying to figure out the audiobook thing. I'm moving, so I'm going through all that. Trying to sell my car. It broke down again. I don't want to go into
What?
that. Don't. Yeah, it didn't.
No,
This is the third. I know.
You
But
pay him already?
I did pay them. Yeah, it's a warranty. It's under a warranty, but they can't get the fuel pump to work properly. It's
Yeah, that's worse.
yeah.
Doesn't matter. Because
I know. I don't want to get into it right now because I want to stay positive because we got a positive outlook here. We do have some really interesting stuff to talk about. I've got some UFO stuff and some other stuff to talk about. You want me to do that, or do you want to get into that?
do that first. Let's get that out of the way.
Okay. So I want to give you guys a little update on the Malcolm Bendall stuff. Did you hear about what happened on the weekend then?
I seen that you forwarded me something, but I'll admit I didn't have a chance to read it yet. I just got home a few hours ago.
Well, it was a live stream. So Randall posted this as well. So this was a live stream, a live demonstration. I think it was in New Mexico of the motor with Malcolm Bendall. This is the new clean technology, the sacred built on ancient wisdom and sacred geometry that Randall, the big controversy with Joe Rogan. Anyways, they did a live demo with a group of people that were there, I guess, all weekend. And they brought the engine in. I think they brought the parts in from the UK, which was running on an engine in the UK. Then they brought it in here and they put it on a new engine. And the new engine had some problems and they had to put it on another new engine. Like 5 hours they were building like a new engine and putting this stuff on. But anyways, it seemed to be running fine and the exhaust seemed to be working. The plasmoids were working. Took a little bit of finagling to get it going with the new engine. And but in the end, it seems like it's working. And they were measuring the exhaust and the carbon dioxide's down and the oxygen's up. And I mean, dude, he had a team of people around him and the team is like, this is real and it's working. We're getting measurements. We've got an industrial power plant in the UK retrofitted with it. There's big industrial machinery that's retrofitted with it. I mean, it really seems like this is legit and it's going forward. So I just want to give everybody an update. I mean, actually, I'll put a link in the show notes. It's probably $30 for the 6 hours of video, but I think it's still available to purchase. But, it's on HowTube. So there you go.
HowTube.
And
Are
then
you in on that?
What?
Are you in on the? I don't know. I'm still on the fence.
Yeah, man. I think it's legit.
I appreciate your optimism.
I
know you have no fucking understanding of it, but you're just still yeah.
Well, yeah. It's
I have no
mutation.
It's modern and I'm going the other way. So
what?
We have the same understanding of it, but we've gone in different directions.
Yeah. Well,
our ignorance is. I guess you're the optimist.
I'd love to be one of the first ones driving around with a retrofitted car at clean energy, right? The carbon.
You think you could? Are we on the list for cars or anything?
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe my car needs to be, instead of selling it, maybe I should retrofit it.
Well, maybe can we get some cars?
No, first thing we need plans to build the shit and all that. I mean, they really need to start mass producing this shit,
But are we on the list to get cars for you've been supporting them from day one?
Yeah, I think we're on the short list. Yeah.
Yeah. That'll be good. I'll be road tripping like a motherfucker when I don't have to pay for gas anymore. What's the tow capacity?
Yeah, I mean, apparently it increases the efficiency. It doubles the efficiency and cleans the exhaust. I mean, it's brilliant, right? I mean, that could be the answer to the world's problems.
All right. Let's hear about your aliens.
So, I mean, I've been going back.
Disclosure stuff?
What?
Is this more disclosure stuff?
Well, yeah, kind of. I mean, I've been following the Juan. I've seen him on a
Michael Juan
video. No, he's the Juan, the Juan, the Juan. And it's just this Twitter post that I found fascinating because he's like a timeline from Roswell 47 to the creation of the DOE in 77. So 30 years after Roswell, the DOE. And remember way back when we did our black budget episodes and we did that one on the national labs in the DOE, right? And I've never forgotten how many of those national labs like Los Alamos and Lawrence Livermore and Brookhaven and they were funded by the DOE. So he says, I guess we know who took custody of those crashed discs. Number 1, 47, the Roswell crash. Number 2, 47, custody of the crashes given to Los Alamos, run by the Atomic Energy Commission. 74, that commission reorganized into the Energy Research and Development Administration. And then in 77, it reorganized as part of the DOE. And I find that fascinating.
That's the Department of Energy, right?
Yeah.
They got all the secrets.
Yeah.
They're the ones, right?
I know. I think they're the ones that kind of like but these labs, I mean, if the DOE is funding these labs, whether it's like official funding or black budget funding or whatever, and they're like, that's sort of semi-private compartmentalization of the stuff, right? I mean, that would be a way to hide the technology and bring it out into industry through these labs, right? I mean, and each person in the lab, you're signing, all these guys, it's all top secret labs. They're signing NDAs and all that kind of stuff when they work there, or whatever you call that. And they, they probably work in a little area analyzing this metal, but they don't really know where it's from or what it's for. And they're not allowed to know.
Do they talk like that too?
Yeah. So here's a quote for you.
Oh, wait. Yeah. I got the thing. Oh boy, I don't know. No, that's not it. I just want to try and get this right the first time. I've been not doing great on the UFO quote. There's so many fucking quote jingles in this soundboard now.
Yeah. I
know that last time I did get it after the third try. Maybe it's this one.
No.
Nope. UFO quote.
Down and Graham going deep. It's a profound UFO quote of the week. Words to ponder and critique.
I do really love this one.
It's a profound UFO quote of the week.
So DOE, you say? This is from the one again.
But it's not profound quotes in the one?
It's not his quote, but basically what happened was after we climbed back up, the DOE, Department of Energy people were there. They knew about it, UFO crash retrieval in Peru. So I don't know why we went there still to this day. But anyway, I was arrested. I had all my gear taken from me by men in black camis. They had no name tags. They were older men, probably in their late 30s and 40s. I was at the site probably 15 or 20 minutes. We were the first people on the position. Then there were other people. They had containment suits. They must have just gotten there.
I have no idea who to. I'm not guessing these UFO ones.
That's Lance Corporal Jonathan Wegant.
Like Chinese?
No, I don't think so. Anyways,
well, guys,
it's a bit of a controversy. Nobody knows if it's real or not, and people are.
I know it's real. We need support. Grimerica.ca/support. If you can, when you guys, if you're getting some value from our show here, 615 episodes out there, all back catalogs for free. We try and bring you some quality entertainment. We do the Outlawed show. We have a bunch of free stuff over there. All fun stuff there. So what we're going to...
Well, and before you move on from that...
I'm not going to move on from that. We just need some support. Grimerica.ca/support. If you're getting some value from the show, that's how you send some value back our way. Some people make us jingles, like Felix makes us jingles, and Nat makes us art. And we have all these people used to email us all sorts of stuff just to read on the show. That's a different way to support the show. Sharing the show is a way to support the show. And ultimately sending in financial support is a way to support the show at Grimerica.ca/support. Whether it's $1 a month, whether it's a one-time donation once, whether it's $5 a month, it's all out there for free, but it's not supposed to be free. So if you are getting some value from a little podcast here, head to Grimerica.ca/support today, sign up for a monthly or make a one-time donation. Before I do move on to how we are bringing some more value to your life, to your commute, to your gym, to whatever you're listening, your work, whatever it is, What did you got?
No, I just want to talk about Grimerica a lot too. We are putting out extra episodes over there too, and we're doing kind of like this. We're doing at least one episode a week, just me and Darren shooting the shit, going over like latest episodes and stuff like that. One of them is free, one of them is subscriber based. But these intros might be a tad shorter. We might not get into as much detail because we're spending time over there in Outlawed now as well. So we'd love to have a bunch of people migrate over to Grimerica Outlawed. It's a completely separate podcast. Separate feed.
Yeah, and you don't have to pay for that. You can it's free. If you just type Grimerica Outlawed into wherever you're listening to this show, it'll come up. We had it set at 33 episode back catalog. We're going to just take that off and open it up so that for free you can get the whole back catalog for free. There's 152 free episodes over there, an hour long. Some of it's some pretty controversial stuff. And there's a whole system over there where you can get more of those interviews and a bunch of extra contents like the roundups. We're doing Canadian politics, stuff like that on the free ones that won't get us kicked off of the regular platforms. And the other ones are like quack scene deaths, summaries from across the board, and the trans agenda stuff from the angles opposite of what you're hearing every place else. And the stuff that is, cancelable, they're still deleting our old stuff off of YouTube for talking about stuff before it was even a thing. So there's Grimerica Outlawed. Like I say, you don't have to pay it. You don't have to be paying to get it. It's just there, 152 episodes for free. And if you want to support there, you can. Some people do.
Speaking of getting canceled.
Speaking of getting canceled, of course, we've been talking about their audiobooks, which has been, over the last few years, we've published 97 audiobooks on Audible. For every audiobook sold, we get 40%. Amazon gets 60%. And then because I had some issues with my KDP account last year, at the end of last year, which KDP is impossible to talk to. It's just a robot. You're just constantly dealing with a robot. So they deleted my Kindle account last year. I had another Kindle account. They deleted that when they found out it was associated to me. They found out Graham was associated to me and deleted his KDP.
Which is not really, that's not even, it wasn't even really legit, right? That's not like, it wasn't your account. It was my fucking account.
Yeah, well, not only that, after that, we had some friends of the show start up some accounts for us and try to, because it was an avenue we were using to publish your Kindle book before you could make the audiobook. You had to have this sort of process. You had to have that ebook made before you could do it. So we were like, well, we'll have some friends do it. So they made some KDP accounts. They tried to publish some books. When they noticed that they were publishing the same titles we used to have published, they deleted their accounts and refused to turn them back on. Wouldn't hear you, just talking to AI robots the whole time. That's it. No discussion. So
and they don't even give you a warning. Like when the first thing happened, no warning, no like, hey, this is a strike. We don't like what you tried to do there. It's just like, oh, you're shut down. No questions asked.
Yeah. So then we were like, well, it wasn't a huge deal because we were able to, because of the public domain nature of the content, we were able to work with other publishers that already had versions of them out. It was just sort of a back and forth publicity thing where we could link to their books and keep going until mid-July, when we were informed that because the Kindle account associated wasn't the Kindle account in general, it was the Amazon account. The Amazon account used to have the audiobook account needs to be in good standing in all Amazon products. And because it had been suspended from KDP, they were going to suspend it from there too. We went back and forth with them for a couple weeks. They didn't pay us for our June sales, which amounts to thousands and thousands of dollars. We're not going to get into that too much yet because we're waiting until the end of the month to see if they're going to pay us the money they owe us or not. If they don't, we'll talk about that more. But anyway, long story short, that's for sales past. Like they haven't paid us for sales for the month of June yet or July. Or now August, so it'll be 2.5 months of sales that they haven't paid us for. We're waiting to the end of the month to see what happens there, so we decide what our next move is. And then on top of that, they've now terminated the account. The books are no longer for sale, so you can't find any of those audiobooks on Audible or Amazon as of right now. Actually, I guess I could I'll play the jingle.
Adultbrain.ca. That's ADULTBRAIN.ca.
So anyway, yeah, they deleted the account. So those books are no longer for sale. So we have been squirming. We had an exclusive deal with Audible for 97 titles, which is how we got the 40% royalty. Because if you do a non-exclusive deal, it cuts in half. And Audible's about 65% of the market, so it was easy. So now we paid the price for that. They've deleted our account. We were left scrambling. We have found another distributor to go through to get our books into Kobo and wherever else you can get audiobooks, that Libra, audiobooks.com, all these different places that aren't Audible.
Or
they'll be back on Apple for sure. For sure, they'll be back on Apple. We're trying to get them back on Audible as well. So we'll find out about the Audible thing for sure. Well, we'll know by the end of the month, but we're going through a different distributor that can get us into Audible non-exclusively for, a little less than half the money. But we'll also be on those other platforms, which should make up for some of that. We'll see how much we make on sales. It looks like we're going to take a hit on sales either way. But the non-exclusive nature of the deal left us free to sort of brainstorm some stuff. So we spent, 16 or 17 hours a day last week re-uploading, 150 gigabytes worth of audiobooks to these new distributors and doing all the new metadata over and the art over
at Adult Brain,
chapter titles. And so we got all that, or we got probably a third of those into distribution now. So it's a matter of how long it takes before we find out what platforms they made it to. And when, as that happens, we'll let you guys know where you can start getting those books again. They're still at adultbrain.ca. But we thought, why not take some of this into our own hands now that it's a non-exclusive agreement? We can do whatever we want with these audio files, including sell them on those other platforms. But we're podcasters. And, it's funny because I'd heard from some people that were no good audiobook podcasts. So I kind of started poking around. I couldn't find a good audiobook podcast. So we decided we're going to make an audiobook podcast called Adult Brain Audiobooks. And so we're going to upload all of our 100 books and growing. We're going to keep going. We add about a title or two a month, sometimes 3, depending on how long they are. Those will go up for sale to those distribution centers. Maybe Audible, maybe not. But they'll also go to the Adult Brain Audiobook Podcast, which will have 100 samples, that are somewhere between either a third of the book if it's a short book or a long chapter if it's a long book. And so there'll be hundreds of hours of those audiobooks available there. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to take 3 of those books and make them available free. And on the first every month, we're going to switch those. The first week of each month, we're going to switch those 3 books up to 3 different books. So every month there'll be 3 of these. ISIS Unveiled, Unabomber Man, all these different books are going to just cycle through being free each month. So you can just sign up for the Adult Brain Audiobooks RSS feed and just get it for free. Just like that. Boom. Done. That RSS feed is not submitted to Apple yet, but it is. You'll be able to click on it at adultbrain.ca. There'll be one button at the top that says Get Premium, another button that says Free Podcast. Like I say, there'll be 3 books a month free for the one. We're going to start it out with, I think we're going to make Hamlet's Mill free. We're going to make the Unabomber Manifesto and Other Essays by Ted Kaczynski free, which has 3 essays you've never heard before. And what was the other one?
Book of the Damned by Charles Fort.
Book of the Damned by Charles Fort in honor of all the new UFO stuff. So you can just
honor the falling rocks from the sky that have been going on the other day.
We're going to submit the feed to Apple tonight. I don't know if it, so Graham's going to start submitting the feed right after we're done recording. It might be searchable in your podcast player by the time this comes out. It might not. I don't know how long they take. But if you just head over to adultbrain.ca, like I say, there'll be a button on the top that you click that'll open up the RSS feed. It should just open it up in whatever podcast player you're listening to. That'll be the free one. You'll see another button there that says Get Premium. What's that all about, you say? Well, we got 100 books here, and instead of just rotating them out for free all the time, we figured, well, for people who don't want to wait, You can just pay the $7.77 a month, become an Adult Brain Premium member, and that'll give you access to all 100 audiobooks all the time for free, wherever you go, including like I say, on average, we're adding 30 to 40 titles a year right now to the catalog. We're just going to keep uploading those to the podcast, so you can just keep piling stuff in there.
And we'll be able to do ones that can't get to Audible either. Like ones
that's the other thing. We have some books that are too racy for Audible. Like now we're going to start re-looking at this from a perspective of, we might not agree with the content, but we're going to read some books that they say maybe shouldn't be read. Those will be available for members back there, and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be a kind of a value thing where you're getting these free books all the time. You can also sample 97 other books and decide if you want to sign up for Plus or wait a few months till maybe they come up for free. Or you can decide, hey, I just want that book. I don't want to wait. I'll just go to fucking Kobo or to Amazon or to wherever, and I'll just buy that book and listen to it on that podcast player, even if that's Audible. I don't care. I mean, whatever. Yeah, they control enough of the industry that I'm not going to disparage them too much. It's frustrating to fight with them. We hope they pay us. If they don't pay us, we'll probably, disparage them a little bit more. But as for now, we're hoping to still have some sort of relationship with them because it is a huge outlet. We'd like the books to be able to get there. Ultimately, though, if you guys want to get those books that we've been talking about forever for free, a bunch of them for free, and free samples of all of them. I think the sample for ISIS 2 is like 2.5 hours long or something like that. So you get a good chunk of the book to decide if you like it or not.
Can I give you an idea of where they're also at too, besides Audible? Like Scribd.
Well, yeah, do it.
Spotify, uBook, Biblioteca, Follett, Hoopla, Overdrive, Oversoft, Wheelers, 3Leaf. Audiobooks.com, Audiobooks Now, BAM, Beak, Binge Books, Bogus Play, Bookmate, Chirp. So we're thinking this is really a good thing in the end. We're positive. We can put all our stuff. We're going to get all our stuff out there, all these places instead of just Audible, because there is some pushback against Amazon and Audible too. I know that.
Not only that, we get the podcast. So we got all of a sudden this way where all these people, if you don't like all that shit, you can just do it through a podcast player. You can support us directly. You can get, 100 books and counting, all the Charles Fort, all the Agrippa, all the Blavatsky's pretty much, and we're still just going hard. Yeah. We're still recording now that we have an outlet again. Graham starts narrating like crazy. Like I say, we're adding 30 to 40 titles a year on average. So you're looking at 2 or 3 titles a month, adding to that 100 books if you want to be a member. Or like we say, we're going to keep cycling through some free books. Probably like some other books will be free all the time, like because my book's free. Other places, I'll just have that on there for free once it gets going. But anyway, this gives you guys a chance. You can sign up now. I'll be honest, I think we've only got 6 or 7 books uploaded right now. The free ones are available. If you want to sign up and get the free books right now, you can get the 3 free books and a few sample chapters to check out. If you want to sign up to be a member, you can get the 6 or 7 full books right now. We're going hard. I'm adding 5 or 6 books a day. I'm thinking it's going to take me 2 weeks to get the full. There's the ISIS Unveiled is 29 hours, so it's 60 hours of files just for 2 books that I've uploaded so far. Helmut's Mill's another 20 some hours. So it takes time to get all those files up there, but you can rest assured that that's what we're working on full time in the background right now, is getting both of those feeds populated. So for now, what we want you guys to do is either download the free feed if you're interested in the audiobooks, or if you want to sign up to be a member and bear with us, you only get the 5 or 6 books now, probably 20, 30 by the end of the week and 100 by the end of the month. You can go sign up now and start listening to some stuff. You can listen for free now. You can even, start if you have an audiobook friend and they want to listen to a free book. Go ahead. Just bear in mind that's not done yet. We're a few weeks from having it full. It's not full yet. But we're going hard. We're uploading hard. We're hoping we can become the biggest audiobook podcast in the world, because when I look around right now, there's not a lot of crazy competition. It seems like a new avenue for this. And we're excited to see what it can turn into. And that's just another way, if you guys want to support us right now, well, we're fucked. If a bunch of you signed up for that, that would definitely help to pay the rent next month while we're waiting to see what the fuck happens around here. Like I said, you can just hit grimerica.ca/support. That's another way. But we do finally have answers on audiobooks. We're officially canceled from our ACX account. We're trying to get back into Audible through a back-end distributor. We are in all those other places Graham mentioned for sure. We will be back in Apple for sure. The only place that we don't know for sure right now is Audible. 50-50. But we're definitely on adultbrain.ca and coming at you with a brand new podcast, Adult Brain Audiobooks.
Right on. Thanks, buddy. What?
That's all I got. We're going to spend probably 200 hours getting this feed and everything figured out and done. But the premium feed and the free feed are both workable right now. The website's workable, so you can go get the free one or get the other one and just watch it grow every day by a few titles. Sign up to be a member now if you want us to support us that way. And you can tell your friends about the show.
Yeah.
But it's been a pretty trying month, 3 weeks, but it seems like we're back on track in Grimerica. Yeah. So thanks for the people that did, just throw a one-time donations our way to help us, float the gap and pay some bills when that shit just didn't show up, because we just found out like 3 days before we got paid that we weren't getting paid. So
yeah,
that's all I got. You got anything else?
No, that's it.
All right, guys, let's get back into Atlantis. Happy times in Grimerica. Enjoy the chat with the one and only Michael Le Flem.
Michael, how's it going? Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Before I forget, big shout out to the Amish Inquisition, who I heard your episode with them. It was fantastic, and they connected us, and now I listened to your audiobook, Visions of Atlantis: Reclaiming Our Lost Ancient Legacy. It was really awesome. I loved it.
Oh, thank you.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, this will be fun. We've done a few different shows on Atlantis. Some people have views about all different areas of where they are, but I think yours was a real unique look because you kind of went a different way, right? Do you want to talk about maybe how you chose to go the route you did on your book?
Yeah, I was interested in just plugging in some details that I felt were really difficult to access, because you've got obviously Plato's Plato's accounts from his 2 dialogues, which are detailed, but they don't exactly reconcile this idea that it was a highly advanced civilization that I heard a lot of people talking about. And I was interested, as a historian myself, in, when did this Atlantis was more advanced than us idea come into the discussion? And then is there any evidence of that I can access? And, to do that, you have to tap into things like remote viewing, things like past life readings, or in the case of, I think, the strongest evidence, it would be clairaudience, which is, essentially hearing voices, which I understand people's reservations with, but I would urge anybody, read the chapter on, my analysis of the channeled book, A Dweller on Two Planets, which was channeled in 1886 and is describing not only current geological findings that were not known in 1886 about North and South America, or the, say younger Dryas impact theory, which was, very few people were actually talking about that at that time, and describing high technology, basically flying machines, crystal technology, and why that technology was lost before the final destruction, which I've always said, when people say, well, how did they go from, Star Wars to the story Plato was telling? Because in Plato's story, they're sailing in triremes. It's basically, he's describing a Bronze Age society, albeit in a lost megalithic capital city and things like this. Well, that book explained it, because he said, look, at the end, the final millennia, society devolved and people forgot how to build the phones, the holographic projectors, the flying ships, and basically regressed to this Mad Max world that, I would argue Plato was himself chapping into from the story that the Egyptians gave him, who I think there's overwhelming evidence are the descendants and a remnant colony of these people. And according to their own stories, that's the case. So that's not my opinion. That's what the Egyptians anecdotally and in the Turin Kings list themselves suggest, that they came to that region after and during the kind of final destruction, which itself was not, I think, literally in a day, although perhaps there was one day with a lot of destruction that was captured. But according to my investigation was, took place over many centuries, actually. And, I think it's important to, the details really matter in this story, because just from the, the word Atlantis, I think a lot of people just think literally that there's a circular city, and if you find it, you have found the entire story. And, even in Plato's account, he's not talking just about the capital city, which is circular. He's talking about a mid-Atlantic island, large island, probably larger than England or around the same size, that had control over other islands and dominion over the Mediterranean, and was aware of the North American continent, and was a military industrial empire, according to Plato. So when people say, well, it's in the Bahamas, it's in North America, it's in Mauritania, it's in Egypt, it's in here, it's like, well, if you're looking for evidence of the Roman Empire and you find the Colosseum, does that mean you found the Roman Empire? No. It means you found the capital city of the Roman Empire, but you're going to see ruins in Carthage. You're going to see ruins, in Gaul. You're going to see ruins in England. It just means that you found evidence of the empire, not the whole story. So I think that was another important thing I wanted to kind of just correct, because I had seen so many people kind of just looking for the magical circular city, and then, where is it? We haven't found it. It's like, well, we might never, that might actually be the worst thing to look for, because if that indeed exists, it's probably at the bottom of the ocean around the Azores or the Canary Islands from my research. So why not look for things that we can see? Like, why not look at the Giza Plateau? Why not look at the temples in the Yucatan, where many of these channelers said the remnants went,
So can you get into that book a little bit more? Because I think that's one thing that's sort of lesser known about the whole thing. And you kind of mentioned it's almost like a modern Star Wars tale in a way, but it is. Go back and you found some stuff that's sort of directly correlated to what you were looking at on a map. And it's interesting to date, because what really shocked me over the last couple of years I was reading all these books from the 1800s, like narrating Blavatsky's books, like Isis Unveiled and The Secret Doctrine. And I was quite surprised how she was talking so much about giants and ancient megalithic cultures in Atlantis and Lemuria. And I was like, I kind of thought that was more of like a modern thing, that we were all just sort of like, it's kind of a modern mythology. I didn't realize it went back to the late 1800s, but that's around the same time this guy wrote his book.
Right. Yeah.
Like, do you think he knew about Isis Unveiled? Did he read some of that theosophical stuff at all? Or
Absolutely not. I mean, there's almost no chance that, Frederick Oliver, a 17-year-old kid who, lived in 1882, I think he was 17 in 1882. I mean, the chance that he was reading Madame Blavatsky in the front, the frontier, the Wild West in Eureka, California as a minor, I really would be shocked. If you could even find a copy of that book, I would be. But it's possible. But
not to give away any details, because it might just give him sort of the idea that there's something there. But I mean, he gets into all the details, right?
Look, it's possible, and I even say that in the analysis. I list everything he could have read. So for example, Ignatius Donnelly's "The Antediluvian World" came out in 1882, I believe. And so when he started channeling this book, A Dweller on Two Planets, 4 years later, it's technically possible he could have read, a congressman's, story of Atlantis. The only problem is nowhere in, Helena Blavatsky's work or Ignatius Donnelly's work do the authors provide even remotely as much information on the high technology. That's nowhere in the Antediluvian World. And if Blavatsky talks about it, it's like high mental faculties. She's not describing like the technology, like this is how the flying ship works. This is how holographic handheld projectors work. She's not talking about anything like that. So to me, the story of the high tech Atlantis really begins with this kid's channeled story, A Dweller on Two Planets, which, he claims have, been receiving the voice or the messages from a, spirit or consciousness that was, coming to him from Mount Shasta, because he lived right next to Mount Shasta, which is, again, a strange kind of sacred site in Native American culture, and with many, members of spiritual movements today. Some strange things have been reported around there, like it's some sort of energy, center, sacred site, like a Stonehenge type thing. So that was interesting. And, the voice basically tells him, look, I want you to tell my story of my past in Atlantis. And what's really interesting is, the kid himself resists really doing it. Like, I mean, as anybody would that's receiving messages that's never received messages, the kid thought he was going crazy. His parents were really concerned. He lost a bunch of friends. And it took him 3.5 years to produce this thing, which was a 400-page book about life in 11,160 BC on the island of Poseid, which was one of the final Atlantean islands. And he draws a picture of it. And it's interesting because there's no picture of the bottom of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge in 1882, 1886. There's a contour map that the Challenger expedition made with soundings. So, I see it behind you. It's just over your left shoulder, that fin-shaped triangular. Right.
So here's
right there
on my screen. Is this it here? Like right here?
Yes. And and Google, if you can pull up a Google image of
this
Frederick Oliver's sketch of
Yeah.
Poseid. He sketched that before it was even known.
Because I'd love to know what this looks like with 400 feet less of water, just for example. But I know that there's theories of the isostatic depression and how it actually sunk quite a ways. But
right,
it would be good to just see what it would look like without 400 feet of water.
Well,
I mean,
according to him, that triangular shape is Poseid.
Yeah, which is interesting, because he's naming it like, how did he come up with Poseid, right? Poseidon. I mean, it's
exactly. And again,
one of the most ancient names.
Well, and again, in Plato's account, Plato places it directly in front of the Straits of Gibraltar. So there you go. And what's in the middle of the capital city?
Look at that.
Temple of Poseidon.
I mean, look at what if this whole thing was like,
Yeah. So it's like, when people say, well, where is it? It's like, well, one of the islands, Poseid, is probably right there. at the top of what Ignatius Donnelly, even he believed that as well. He said that in his book. He said the Azores are the most likely place that Plato was describing.
So do you think those were little plateaus and stuff, like you think with the whole isostatic depression thing, and that even those plateaus that are, I forget what they are, but I want to say they're a couple thousand feet down now, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. 1,000 or 2,000 feet, yeah.
Yeah, and that's also where a giant pyramid underwater was found, by Diocleciano Silva, a Portuguese fisherman, who has a picture of it on his depth finder, and that account was just kind of, he's using faulty equipment. And it's like, well, no, he's not. I actually tried to get in contact with him and had a friend on the Azores who went and tracked him down and confirmed that, no, it's not fake. He really did, have this. And I'm a fisherman, so I looked at the depth finder myself, and I know the difference between a reef and a perfectly cardinally aligned pyramid, and there is one at the bottom of the Azores off the island of Terceira. So it's like there's even more evidence. Also, in Frederick Oliver's account, he says, this was just like Plato said, this is an empire that spanned multiple continents.
Yeah.
And he talks specifically about North America in a way that's really interesting. Like he has an entire theory of how the Grand Canyon was forged. And he also, as a 17-year-old kid with no geological, no ability to confirm these things, he's talking about, did you know there used to be an inland sea here? We used to call it Lake Mitti, in Arizona. And it's this incredibly detailed account. And it's like, well, that's true, and on and on and on. All these things he talked about, talking about, well, we're flying now in our cigar-shaped aluminum flying craft that can go underwater and in the air. And we're stopping at the mines, the copper mines in Lake Superior.
Wow.
And it's like,
I want to just show everybody this before we move off the ridge, because the mines is fast. The other fascinating part about it. But you referenced your thing on your website here, Visions of Atlantis. Like, this map really shows a lot. I mean, it's unbelievable. Where did you get this map from? And look at how massive that whole mid-Atlantic ridge is. Was this just without water, or?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's always speculation, and it's always, opposing theories of how much of that was above water. I think certainly, at least in the 50s, from my research, with the people that created that map, like Maurice Ewing, I think that's where I got it from, who was one of the first to actually map the bottom of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge with Marie Tharp in the 50s and 60s. They actually were really surprised, because they said, there's certain aspects of this that don't make sense. Like when they did a deep sea sounding and they found, freshwater diatoms and stuff in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. They're like, this isn't a deposit from a glacier. This actually was above sea level at certain points in the northern part of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge 12,000 years ago. And it's like, well, that puts us back to the same time Plato was talking about, the Younger Dryas, extinction event, if you want to call it that, or, just the end of the last ice age, when the entire contours of the northern hemisphere, probably the world, were fundamentally changed. And so it's interesting because Plato, writing in 360 BC, somehow guessed, when people say this is fake, he somehow guessed from the Egyptians who told Solon the story that the ice age ended around 9600 BC, which is exactly when he places the final destruction of Atlantis. So how did he know that in 360 BC? That was not known in 360 BC. How did the Egyptian priests know that a comet hit the earth? It's what he tells Plato in the story. He's like, you have a myth of Phaeton. It's not a myth, though. It actually signifies when celestial bodies descend on earth and burn everything up. They're talking about things that only in, fairly recent times, were really discussed. The comet impact theory in my investigation was actually proposed in the Enlightenment by one of Voltaire's friends, Gian Rinaldo Carli, in the mid 1700s. Actually said, I think a comet hit the Earth and ended the last, civilization that existed here. And he cited Plato in the 1750s. And then other people ran with that until you've got things like, James Kennett, who found the nano diamond deposits, and Graham Hancock talks about that. And, it seems like a comet definitely did hit the Earth around that time.
Well, and there's a lot of mainstream acceptance around, us in Canada being under a mile or two of ice,
right?
Just only 12,000 years ago or whatever. And all the megafauna extinctions. I mean,
exactly.
Randall Carlson. We do tours with Randall Carlson around the Scablands of Washington. We have one coming up in Montana and September 19th, where he takes us around all the landscape, going over like what happened in that flood.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it that's similar to the mainstream, but there's a couple main things that are different, that he doesn't think it all came out of the Lake Missoula. He thinks it came down from Canada.
Yeah. And I remember reading some of the things he wrote about that. And, his pictures are really compelling, because it's like, it does look like a bunch of debris and ice flows just gouged out that area like a huge claw coming from. It makes perfect sense, and if the comet, let's say, hit the actual ice sheet, well, then that's why we don't have an impact crater, so it does make sense. And and between Frederick Oliver and Edgar Cayce, who gave 500 readings, not intentionally, a lot of them were just incidental past life readings that happened to touch on Atlantis. A couple were study groups who had like a list of questions prepared for him while he was in his, deep hypnagogic trance. And even he says basically the same thing. It all goes back to this, 10 to 11,000 BC time window for the final destruction, So I just wanted to piece together I really wanted to make a book where anybody, my friend's mother or Graham Hancock himself could pick it up and not just learn something, but really, to me, the goal was, I want to show people every single angle of this enigma. I want to show you the critics. I want to show you the quote unquote debunkers. I want to show you pre-Platonic sources that talked about it. So people stop thinking it's just Plato, he made it up. No, it's in the Mahabharata.
Yeah.
It's in the King's List, the Turin King's List, It's not just Plato. There's 7 pre-Platonic sources I think I cite. Yeah. And then you have Plato's dialogues. There was a festival in ancient Greece for 200 years celebrating Athena's defeat over the Atlantides before Plato wrote his book. So it's like, I don't really wanted to put that to bed. This whole, he cooked it up to sell the version of, an idealized Athens triumphing over the Atlanteans. No, he specifically says at the beginning of the book, this is not a myth. Why would you disclaim that if it were a myth? Why?
Yeah. So let's talk about or Darren, do you have a question?
Well, I'm just, because you at the beginning, we kind of went past it, but at the beginning you were talking about how, they kind of got to the point where it was like the slow demise of them not being able to build the stuff anymore. I can't remember now if you were talking about that, like that was your thoughts on it, or if you were dismissing it. But there just seems to be some kind of correlations with that, with where we're at today. No?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's like the whole final chapter of the book is basically like, I don't think it's a coincidence that everybody's suddenly talking about this subject in the past, decade. I think, we're all reminded of the way the world is going today. I mean, look, in Frederick Oliver, the 17-year-old kid who channeled, in his vision in 1886 of the end, what was the end? The end was basically the World Economic Forum of Atlantis abandons everybody and turns into, in his words, electricity and elemental forms of life, and abandons humanity.
Wow,
So
that's crazy.
it's kind of like a transhumanist ending for him. And they basically, he says, over 800 to 900 years, society forgets how to make the phones, the flying ships, the infrastructure, the internet, which he accurately describes in 1886, which is interesting. And he says basically the society began doing human sacrifice and sex rituals and all this weird stuff in these formerly sacred temples, until finally, he doesn't specifically explain how, but he says, a cataclysm destroyed the civilization. And, the group of people that, used to hold up the world, which is interesting because that's what Atlas, the Greek god, does. And that's also what the Aztec god Atlanteotl, halfway across the world, they have the same god holding up the heavens in the Aztec myths and in the Greek myths, which is supposed to be impossible since, Columbus discovered the new world. But he says that symbolically Atlantis held the world aloft in the arts and sciences, until it was eventually this debaucherous Mad Max world that was just trying to survive at the end. And I think that's the civilization the part of the civilization that Plato was describing was the final centuries, of this culture that over many different iterations and governments and races, even, because this was a multicultural world with people traveling all over the world and trading and meeting with people. So it wasn't just like one group of people that, according to Edgar Cayce, had been around for nearly 250,000 years. Yeah, which is hard to believe.
Did that 17-year-old say that that the collapse of humanity was related to the cataclysm itself?
He said they started. He says that the apex. This is what Frederick Oliver says. This is, since you asked, he said the apex of human achievements in the arts, sciences, spirituality, and just pure technology was around 11,000, or actually he said it was around 10,600 BC. He's like, that was the absolute apex of technology. And then over a couple hundred years, that was all lost. And by, 10,300, 10,400, we had devolved back to basically what we would call ancient Greek technology, chariots, spears, sailing vessels, and things like this. Because
how you hear sometimes people saying that it was them, like it was the devolution of the humanity that caused the cataclysm, like they brought their own destruction, but I almost hear like you're saying it's almost a coincidence in a way that after they
is it a coincidence? I mean, I don't know. Like Edgar Cayce said, there were 3 destructions. The first in 50,722 BC, the second in 28,000 BC, and both of those were human caused by a misapplication of technology involving.
Oh, that's what I'm thinking of. Probably.
Yeah, in the first 2 cases, according to Edgar Cayce, the first was basically some sort of, well, he was writing in 1932, so he's got only so many words he can use, but he basically describes he calls it a stratospheric weapon that was used to try to start limited volcanic eruptions. That was its intent, was to use this stratospheric weapon to trigger limited volcanic reactions to stop the spread of the megafauna that had been overrunning the earth. That's what Edgar Cayce said.
Wow.
And it went wrong, and it actually destroyed the large continent of Atlantis, which he claimed went from the Gulf of Mexico. Basically, the whole top chart of that map I showed you used to be the continent of Atlantis, say in 55,000 BC, which is why you find like a sunken city off the coast of Cuba or the Bimini Road, perhaps, and then also things all the way on the other side, because according to Edgar Cayce, it was first a huge continent. And then that broke into 5 islands. And then the second destruction, almost 22,000 years later, which again is like an impossibly Who knows what happened in those intervening years? How many different leaders and cultures? And it's anybody's guess. I'm just telling you what he said. The second destruction would have been caused, according to Edgar Cayce, by the crystal, the power plant powering this civilization, being overtuned. That destroyed a couple islands, and then there were just 3, which he named Og, Arion, and Poseid, independent of Frederick Oliver, who he had never read. So you got 2 people calling the final island Poseid. You got Plato describing the statue of Poseidon with the Nereids in the center of the capital city. So I think they're all just talking about Poseid at the end. And so that's why the Cayce readings became important, because you see the evolution of this continent that over 40,000 years shrinks into this triangular fin-shaped, one of 3 islands that's remaining. So it's an interesting story because what I wanted to do was show, like, okay, Edgar Cayce says there was a megafaunal extinction at 50,000 BC. Was there? Well, yeah, believe it or not, according to the Journal of Quaternary Sciences, there was an unknown megafaunal extinction at 50,000 BC. Now, is that proof? No. Is it evidence? Absolutely. Because they can't explain it. And that's a peer-reviewed, zoology journal that says, yeah, it's strange. There's a megafaunal extinction at 50,000 BC. Maybe it's hunting, but doesn't really make sense because there weren't enough people hunting to do this. But that's what the fossil record shows. So, like when Frederick Oliver says, we're now in our flying aluminum cigar-shaped craft flying to our copper mines in Lake Superior, where we get our, copper to use in Atlantis. It's like, well, look at Gavin Menzies. He, did a whole book on the copper mines. There's a chapter where he's like, they would have extracted more copper from these mines. There's like 3,000 copper mines in Lake Superior that are at least 5,000 years old. Nobody can explain them. They're not Native American. Some of the tools they found have Phoenician markings. And I would argue the Phoenicians are a final remnant colony of Atlantis, just like the Minoans. I think the entire Mediterranean world, you could say, is influenced by Atlantis, because Plato said it was colonized by them. But what are Phoenician tools doing in Lake Superior, where a channeled kid said that's where the Atlanteans took all the copper? And Gavin Menzies himself said it makes no sense because there's not enough Bronze Age artifacts made of copper in the world to account for the amount of copper taken away. So it's like, well, okay.
Well, because maybe they were using for electroculture, right? I mean, that's the main component of electroculture.
Right. Or maybe they used a lot of it and it's at the bottom of the ocean. Maybe most of that copper went actually to the capital and it's gone. It's at the bottom of the ocean in the Azores right now.
What does the mainstream say about these thousands of copper mines in North America?
They can't explain it. They can't explain it. It's one of many things they can't explain, because it's like the Native Americans themselves said, these aren't our mines. Like we didn't build things out of copper on that scale. We're aware of copper, but we didn't have the Potawatomi didn't have industrial copper mines, in 2,500 BC. But according to Frederick Oliver, there was an enormous Atlantean mining operation. And that's not the only one. Like Michael Tellinger in South Africa always talks about, the Swaziland mine, which has been dated to 50,000 BC. It's like, well, how do you explain that? Who was doing that? The Bushmen? It's just, I'm not saying it's all related. It's just, there's a lot of anomalies on industrial scale. Even Göbekli Tepe, it's almost like that still is ignored in mainstream historical circles. Like we still teach that the entire world was hunter-gatherers until Sumeria. And it's like, well, we've dug up Göbekli Tepe. We can't say, well, where is the evidence? It's like the evidence is pretty clear that that's at least 10,000 plus years old, probably 12,000 years old. And I doubt hunter-gatherers built a astronomically aligned megalithic circular site. I just don't. Why? Why would that? They're not hunter gatherers at that point by definition.
Yeah.
They're megalithic architects.
Do you think that, so does the Giza Plateau fit in with like the previous dates of Atlantis? And is there other megalithic, like, do you think there's stuff all over the world then that would fit in with that timeline if you really, just to speculate even?
It all makes sense. You don't even have to speculate. You know, Robert Bauval, I think pretty conclusively determined that the Giza Plateau, the three pyramids, are aligned to the constellation Orion as it would have appeared in the sky around 10,450 BC. Okay, there's that date again. Edgar Cayce said the Great Pyramid was started in 10,490 and finished in 10,390. He said that 50 years before Robert Bauval did the computer work to determine that. How did he know that? The Egyptians talk about that themselves, you know, that there was this age of demigods and gods that ended around 9,850 BC. It's like it all actually points to this window of 11,000 to 10,000 BC. You know, Freddie Silva has made the case that, you know, from his research that the Maya, you know, it's commonly believed that they're only a couple thousand years old, but it's like in the Chilam Balam, they talk about, no, actually we come from, you know, far, far away, and the ocean swallowed up all of our knowledge. And actually we've been here for, you know, 9,000 years. And it's like, what does Edgar Cayce say? An uneducated man who only read the Bible and the newspaper. He says the survivors of Atlantis went to the Yucatan, which is where the Maya are, the Giza Plateau, and the Pyrenees Mountains, where the Basque language, which is related to the Yucatec and Nahua language halfway across the world in the Mayan culture. It's like, where does that link come from?
Well, and the Basque, the Rh negative blood types of the Basque. I mean, there's a lot of interesting, like, weird anomalies with the Basque peoples, right?
Yeah, there are. And, you know, even the Center for Basque Studies that I, you know, contacted and cited in the book, they say, look, there's no explanation. The center that studies the Basque people, there's no explanation for the Basque language or the origin. And they said jokingly, some people think they're the descendants of Atlantis. And I said, yeah, some people do, because there's really no better explanation. And again, I always ask people, why is that so? Like, why is it such a big deal, Graham, that little triangular shape behind you?
They don't want to, because they don't want us, because honestly, I think it's almost like a cover up. And I mean, whether it's intentional or not, they just don't want us thinking big about our past, and that we were more advanced than we were. Like, they need us to feel like we're the most advanced sort of society.
Sure.
You know, we haven't had these big collapses before. It's, you know, I mean, look at how they attacked Hancock with his Netflix show.
Oh, my God.
Like, they really just don't want us looking into our past. And to me, it says there's certain, I think, elites that know about all this. They know about it. They know
there's
about
no
all that.
way that they don't know. And then there's no way that the Vatican is not aware. I mean, in fact, when, you know, in the Renaissance, when Athanasius Kircher, you know, a Jesuit priest and researcher, very interesting. He's kind of like a Jesuit Graham Hancock of the, you know, Renaissance, like an actual Renaissance man, literally. But, you know, he went to the Vatican Library, and that's where he produced really what is allegedly the only map of Atlantis. And I find it interesting that it was in the Vatican Library, you know, which probably, you know, stole a bunch of things from the Library of Alexandria in the Second Destruction, because it's an Egyptian map. And he says that he copied it from the archives. And again, it shows a large island, probably the second iteration before it broke into three, I would argue. But even a map from the 1st century AD, according to him, shows that triangular shape at the top corner of the map. And it's like, I keep seeing it. And then when I saw the sketch in the Dweller on Two Planets, I mean, I almost fell out of my chair. I was like, that's it. That's Poseidon. That's where the pyramid was. That's where the highest point in one of the biggest mountains in the world, Mount Pico, is in the Azores. And in The Dweller on Two Planets, he starts the book with this journey up what he calls Pitach Rock, which is this enormous snow-capped volcano. And what is Mount Pico? It's a snow-capped volcano, exactly where he says it was on this map that he drew in a clairvoyant state in a cabin in 1882 in a mining town. I mean, it's like, how did he know all of this?
That had a pretty big effect on you, right? When you found it out?
I mean, that was when I knew this was real, because I'm like, of all the evidence, that sketch is so compelling, you know. And I really looked, and I always tell people, like, if you find evidence that there was an actual contour map of the bottom of the mid-Atlantic in 1882, please send it to me, because the only one I could find was the map that the Challenger expedition plotted with depth soundings, but it's just like a colored area. There's no contour lines. And it's like, when you put his sketch of the triangle over the map from a satellite, it fits 100% match. And it's like, that's impossible. That's impossible. There's no way he could have guessed that to that degree of accuracy. So it leads me to believe that probably is where Poseid was, and it makes sense because that's where Plato said it was.
Did he say anything about the pyramids specifically, did Cayce say anything about what the pyramids were used for?
Yeah, Cayce said that basically they were, basically what people on the alternative side believe they are now. Power centers of initiation. Storehouses at some points for certain things. Frederick Oliver, for him, he talks about this pyramid in Atlantis, which he says was very similar to the Great Pyramid of Giza. And, it contained this thing called the Maxen flame, which he said was basically this occult light that had always been there, that was brought by an occult light bringer, again, in the past. This is his story. But that the science involving that was basically, it was a large spade-shaped flame over a quartz block, and it never went out. And if you touched it,
lamps, huh?
Right, and if you touched it, you would be instantly killed, and that they used to cremate people through it because it wasn't a flame, it was an actual, he called it a interdimensional focal point. And he said that it was basically like in his science, which he explains in like 25 pages, the science of Atlantis, which sounds like something Tesla wrote or something, is unbelievable. But he said that in the center of that pyramid was this sacred light, that they built the pyramid around a smaller temple that they had for thousands of years because it was the foundational light of Atlantis.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Huh. It's strange. But yeah, I thought it was interesting because, so many different people from totally unrelated walks of life, parts of the country, other countries, who, why is the Mahabharata talking about the Isle of Atala that sank into the Western Ocean after a 10-year war around 10,000 BC, and things like it's like, these are hundreds of years before Plato, Yeah. So I think really that whole Plato made it up knee-jerk reaction, once you take that away from these people, it's kind of like you realize that's all their ammunition, because there's so much more to the story, not just about Atlantis, but just about this pre-Ice Age civilization that Hancock and others have spent, like you said, 30 years trying to show people, and they still don't want to listen. So, I don't know. I just tried to show the evidence to the best of my ability.
Darren, do you got any questions at all?
Well, you must have. How familiar are you with Randall's work, Randall Carlson?
Graham Hancock? Yeah, I've read most of his books. Yeah.
Randall needs to get his fucking book written. He really does. Because I guess the thing I have the biggest trouble with is it's just so far down there. It really relies on that, on something, right? On isostatic depression, or I don't know what else. Maybe the expanding Earth. I mean, that could do it too. Maybe I'm not sure how, but I guess if an Earth was expanding, it could do that by ripping some of that upper ground down too, right?
Yeah, I've had many people send me articles on the expanding Earth to prove like that plate displacement. I don't know. I was not really like, I think a lot of times people think, this book was like a gimmick, like we're going to find it and then you can go home and tell your mama you found Atlantis. It's like, really what I wanted to do was just like, let's take a bird's eye view of the debate. Let's see what's valid. Let's see what I can individually show that's new. And let's show what hundreds of people have said about this, to the point where, again, as you said, Darren, like it's so long ago that I don't make any claim to say on, May 4th, 10,362, that's definitely when it happened.
But your map on here sure made me think of the expanding Earth theory, with these two continents kind of splitting off and this huge sort of thing left in the middle.
Well, if you look at all the continents, it's kind of like they all fit together in a puzzle piece. If you squeeze them back, it makes sense, I think, especially west coast of Africa. And I don't even think that's debatable. I think that's understood. It's just like, we don't like, it's kind of like a geologist I cited who was talking about this inland sea that used to cover most of Arizona, which we call today Lake Bonneville dry riverbed, or dry lake. And it's like, he even says this, he's like, few people could imagine that there used to be an inland ocean bigger than Lake Superior in Arizona. And he's like, this isn't in the Jurassic period. This is 10,500 years ago. Like, few people can imagine that the world was like, there was an ocean in Arizona and where you're living is 2 miles of ice. You know what I mean? Like, very few people. That's hard for me to believe. Like,
not too long ago.
Not that long ago. Like
120 grandmas ago. I mean,
Oh,
exactly.
dude, you got all your little. They just don't work.
Exactly. The grandmas, the units.
But yeah, it wasn't long ago. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it was really, not fucking long ago. It's a long time for all that ice to go at current rates. I mean, they say the glaciers have moved. I don't know. Maybe they have. It seems like they go kind of back and forth. But even if they have moved, the percent they've moved since we started measuring them is not enough to say where all that other shit went. You know what I mean? At that rate, it would take 1 million years for those ice sheets to melt.
Right. No, and I think what you said at the beginning, like, it actually all makes, I always tell people, like, what you said with the scablands, it's like the alternative, and I hate that word because to me it's just evidence that's compelling or not. I don't believe as a historian myself, I'm an alternative historian. No, I'm just a historian like anybody else. And this is a valid topic. Just like Carlson, why does he have to be a catastrophist? He's just a professional researcher who's doing his job. And if the evidence suggests catastrophism, then that's what it is. But it's like, it makes a lot more sense, especially color pictures.
Especially now with the mapping, like he's pulling up all the USGS stuff, and like this is just Google, right? And this is showing the lobe right near where we go. This is kind of where we travel around here, but this is like the lobe of the glacier. I mean,
right? I mean, it's like
you can't miss this. Like,
well, the other thing too is like we don't have any reference for this because nobody living has any. I mean, besides Hollywood movies or something, like there is no frame of reference to describe to imagine what Carlson has said himself, like describing this wall of water and trees and mountains coming at you that's like 1/2 mile high. Like, I can't even imagine that myself. So I understand why people think this is crazy, because what's the craziest we can imagine? A tsunami or a hurricane? It's like, this is hundreds, thousands of times, orders of magnitude crazier than that. So I get it. And if that did indeed happen, we're traumatized by it at an epigenetic level. So we don't want to talk about that.
Right.
So
exactly.
it's like, I get it. Believe me, because it is scary.
I love how you mentioned. Yeah, I love how you mentioned. Speaking of the epigenetic stuff, I've been thinking about how the past was more like the Lord of the Rings, with all the different varieties of. And I think you even referenced that. Somebody said that in your book.
Yes, they do. In fact, a mainstream Oxford anthropologist said that the world used to be more like Lord of it. He says, I think, quote, "It appears now with all these, hominids that live together that were literally different species of people that were not Homo sapiens." That he said it's beginning to look more like a Lord of the Rings, that we used to truly live in a Lord of the Rings type world. That was an Oxford anthropologist. That wasn't some guy on a Reddit subreddit.
Right.
No offense to subreddits, but I just show that that's what Cayce said. He wasn't an anthropologist, and he said, look, there used to be tiny people the size of Bushmen. There used to be people that were 12 feet tall in the very distant past. Now, again, I'm not saying that's proof. I'm just saying, like, more and more, even people like that anthropologist I cited are having to come to grips with, like, Homo floresiensis, for example, tiny and anatomically, not dwarfs, like anatomically proportional miniature people who battled giant Komodo dragons that were 2,500 pounds and dwarf elephants. I mean, that's crazy. And that wasn't that long ago. That wasn't a million years ago, during the Ice Age. So I think we really can't come to grips with the fact that, like, the Atlantic Ocean did not always separate the world. We didn't have to wait for Columbus to set sail with the Santa Maria to get to the New World. That the Phoenicians themselves, we would have records of their voyages to Brazil if the Romans hadn't erased the libraries of their voyages at Carthage when they burned and then salted the damn city. So it's like, not to mention all the 3 destructions of the Library of Alexandria. So it's like, we don't have even probably more than 0.5% of just the document record of antiquity after the loss of all the world's greatest libraries that were stolen, burned, ransacked, destroyed in military conquest. So when people say, like, well, wouldn't they have written this down? It's like, well, in a pre-internet age, where is it going to go? It's going to go in scrolls. And if anybody knows, it's like, it is in the Vatican. If anybody knows, it's them. But you're not allowed to go there. So we're not going to get those.
They're still finding more, like the non-commodity stuff wasn't found too long ago. I mean,
yeah, look at that, and again, it's like, that was a pure, I talk about that in the book, but it's like, that's a pure, complete chance find. I mean, it's like a 1 in a million find that those people found those. And look what that did to Christianity. I mean, it's unbelievable. And so it's like, you're presuming we have dug every surface of the earth. We found every hominid. We found every document. No, of course not. And have we done sonar scans of every region of the mid-Atlantic? No, we've done very few, if any, So I think it's like the search has just begun, really. Maybe it's not even something in my own lifetime that will be conclusively proven, because I think at some level, it's like, there is enough evidence, as Hancock has shown over and over, or Carlson, or Robert Bauval, or all the people that came before me 30 years ago, I think circumstantially proved that this global, connected, advanced civilization did indeed exist. It's just now you're fighting, like you said, the pushback of these debunker weirdos, these Michael Shermers, these, to me, charlatans. They're not intellectually honest people. They're ideologues, that don't even engage with the information that's new. you know, or they call you a racist or this or that. And it's like, it's just kind of silly to me that you even have to engage with these people. You know?
I think there's a wild card. I think giants might be some evidence might come forward that can't be denied about giants. I think that might be something that sort of projects us faster through all this. I mean,
that would be interesting. That would be interesting. Yeah, that's something I've always been. I always liked like Jim Vieira's work and people like that. Fritz Zimmerman with the Encyclopedia of Giant, and it's fascinating because it's like I've never seen a giant skeleton, you know, in a museum myself. I wonder if it's true, you know, like when ancient sources describe, like we saw a 13-foot giant when we were building Carthage, and it's like, well, you know, 90% of what that guy said about other things we've found to be true. And it's like, I always look for things where there's no incentive to lie. You know, like if Strabo or something is just reporting on, well, this is what I found in, you know, this survey of Carthage, and everything else is like the flora, the fauna, and it's like, and a 12-foot skeleton in a cave. It's like, it's like, okay, well, what's that all about?
Yeah,
you know?
and all culture. I mean, every culture has their mythologies of giants and huge people. So I mean,
mythologies again. Who calls them that? That's us. That's us. They're just stories to these people.
Yeah,
you know, it'd be like if somebody found the remnants of, you know, North America in 2,000 years after a cataclysm, and it's like, oh, you know, you're just talking about the myth of, you know, the airships, you know, the myth of the submarines that they had, the myth of the star weapon that could destroy life on Earth. You know, it's like, no, these are just technologies we have or things that we wrote down and described. So, you know, I mean, I know there is like a physiological limit allegedly to, I think when a person becomes over even like 9 feet tall, it's like circulatory system and again, it's like I don't personally, I don't care if there were or not giants. It's just like I don't care personally, believe it or not, if Poseid indeed is on the map where I said. I'm just like looking at the evidence, and it convinced me that this is real. And it's the same when I see, you know, stories, particularly from North America. From the 19th century, it's like, why would all of these people be making up this story? These people weren't making money. These are just people like, we're digging a foundation for a cemetery, blah, blah, blah. In today's news, this is how big the femur was. Okay, moving on. It's not sensational. It's just like,
and it might have been different atmosphere back then too. I mean, there was the megafauna as well. I mean, there might have been different things, right? So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a very important point, like not just with the density of the atmosphere, but with the geography of the continents, you know, like we need to really kind of stop looking at the present map and saying, well, where is it I mean, Rudolf Steiner said that, and he used a Theosophical Society 4 maps that I showed that, again, they're not like ancient source maps. It was just like the Theosophical Society created their version of what the Earth looked like from the past million years. And basically it's like a much closer. And then it's after the breakups, you've got the kind of current contours. But that's why Rudolf Steiner says you need to stop looking for evidence of Atlantis only in the bottom of the North Atlantic. You might as well look in Tennessee or Brazil or Montreal. You know, you just as well find it there, because you're talking about wildly different contours. You're talking about the Sahara Desert was a verdant meadowland with lakes. Egypt was a verdant meadowland. Siberia was temperate. Canada was under an ice sheet. Antarctica was getting temperate. You know, it's like, I don't think people realize that. They just go, oh, the map's brown now. How come there's a Atlantis in the desert? It's like, well, it was a river system at the time. It wasn't a desert. So, you know, I'm not saying the reshot structure is an Atlantean city. It could be. Randall Carlson thinks it's natural. Okay. I don't put all my eggs in like, it's right here, because this is a global thing. You know, Atlantis itself, according to my evidence, existed concurrently with other advanced, medium, and primitive culture, just like basically the same world that we're in today. It is really not that different, folks. You know, it's just they use different energy and perhaps had reached a higher level of technology.
And spiritual technology.
And spirituality. Yeah, and evil as well. I mean, you're talking about human cloning, genetic human animal mutation, sex trafficking, human sacrifice. I mean, you've got Epstein basically in that. One of the Cayce readings is basically describing an Epstein in Atlantis in one of the readings. It's a disturbing reading, what this guy was doing, and cloning sex slaves and making them to his taste. And it's like one of the weirdest readings Edgar Cayce ever gave to this guy. And he's like, learn from your lesson, man. He's like, you were a Persian slave trader, but in Atlantis, you were doing the craziest stuff with these women that you could create to your taste. And this is how you did it. And it's like, it's just, I think it's much more of a contemporary story than this fairy tale. It's actually just kind of like what we call Star Wars, which again, begs the question, because all these readings were done many years before George Lucas ever came up with the franchise, and they're talking about the franchise. So it's like, and there's very little evidence that Lucas used the Edgar Cayce and Frederick Oliver readings to make the franchise, So it's like, perhaps we all are tapping into some lived reality. That's what Tolkien himself was a huge believer in Atlantis. He used to have dreams about it. And he based the island of Numenor off of Atlantis, according to a letter he wrote to a fan. So, again, I think it's interesting that the two biggest science fiction franchises in the world are describing what Plato, Edgar Cayce, and others have said was real. And I think that's why we're so drawn to them.
Exactly. That's why we resonate with them so much. And they are like traditional hero's journey. Like there is a deep mythological connection with the hero's journey, which they're sort of destroying right now in Hollywood. I mean,
right.
I don't even want the hero's journey anymore, but
yeah, well, I think it's one of the greatest stories of all time, even if you think it's a pure fictional story, If you read what these people were doing, what they had achieved, and just the like crystalline levels of evil and good that these people had reached, it's unreal. Like, it's absolutely incredible. Like, you think Epstein was bad, or name another character. It's like, you got no idea until you read that chapter and see what true evil is, and or what goodness is. You think this leader or that leader was the greatest. Well, think about one of these women in the book that does a certain thing, and it's like, and I think it's basically, it's today on extreme mode, unchecked.
Yeah.
It's kind of like,
it's a warning
where we're going if we don't, I don't know. So, but, any final questions I got about?
Well, no, we should. Yeah, we know you got to bounce. So maybe just where we can find your work and stuff. I'll put links in the show notes. But say where we can find it all.
Yeah, sure. You can find it on Amazon, and you can buy it from Barnes and Noble as well, and in English or Spanish. Actually, just finished the Spanish edition, came out. And you can check out. You can check out if you want to contact me or look at any of the maps, or actually I have links to A Dweller on Two Planets if you want to read it. It's a common public domain book. Yeah, so you can read it on my website at michaelleflem.com.
Awesome.
Perfect. Do you have any social media or anything like that where people can stalk you?
Yeah, just LinkedIn and Facebook. Yeah.
All right.
Right on, Michael. An hour has flown by.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
Yes.
This is great.
Yeah, this has been great. We know you got a class right away, but we'll have to do this again down the road, and maybe we can get you and Randall on together.
No, I really appreciate it, guys. And I'd love to come back, and thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
Thanks, buddy.
Have a good class.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was a chat with Michael Le Flem. What'd you think?
Man, flew by. That was great. Man, I mean, honestly, I really loved his audiobook. I recommend it to everybody. It's got he did it in a unique way where a lot of the the quotes from Plato and other people are kind of done in a theatrical way. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like it. I like the Atlantis stuff. It's always fun. It kind of fits in maybe with the growing Earth, all sorts of fantastic little rabbit holes to go down. And we've heard Atlantis a couple of times now. It's Atlantis or Egypt. It seems to be like those are the two real contenders. If it wasn't just this whole worldwide thing.
Yeah. Wonder if that book's on audio too. That channeled one.
Channel.
Yeah, we should add that to the list.
The list. What list? Big thanks to Michael for coming on the show. Big thanks to you guys for listening. Even bigger thanks if you're a supporter, as we've been sort of harping for the last few weeks. It's never been more important to support. With the audiobook hiatus, we find ourselves with our pants down. Grimerica.ca/support, guys. If you can, when you can. Grimerica.ca for everything else that we're up to. There's only a few spots left for Montana. A few spots left for that great Canadian adventure coming up in November, 9th to 12th. Of course, you can get into Canada without shots now. So if you want to come check that out, all that stuff's over at contact@thecabin.com. And then we love you guys. Thanks for listening. And we will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in to the live show, guys. We'll be back next week. Thanks for the super chats, Peter.
Yeah, thanks.
And PC.
Thanks, Peter.
And Levi did hit us up on the support page. So, yeah, thanks. We will see you motherfuckers later.
You just a drop in the bucket, baby. You're just a single solitary drop in the bucket, baby. You're just a drop in the bucket, baby. You're just a single solitary drop in the bucket, baby. 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 La da da da. Whoa, whoa. In the headlines they read doom and gloom. And I drop down on my bended knee and howl at the moon. Oh, and I drop down on my bended knee, pinching pennies. La da da da. Whoa, whoa. Ta-da. There's $1 million house up for sale back in my hometown. Think I'll buy it up with my good charm. Buy myself a dog to be my best of friend. There's $1 million house up for sale back in my hometown. Think I'll buy it up with my good charm. Buy myself a dog to be my best of friend. Woof. I think I'll be a poet today. Sketch out the scenery. Rambling from here and there and back and forth between here and there and back and forth between here and there and to the corner store. The Sunrise Corner Store. The Sunrise Corner Store. The Sunrise Corner Store. Pinching pennies. La da da da. Whoa, whoa. Ta-da. to be my best of friend. There's $1 million house up for sale back in my hometown. Think I'll buy it up with my good charm. Buy myself a dog to be my best of friend. There's $1 million house up for sale back in my hometown. Think I'll buy it up with my good charm. Buy myself a dog to be my best of friend. There's $1 million house up for sale back in my hometown. Think I'll buy it up with my good charm. Buy myself a dog to be my best of friend. There's $1 million house up for sale back in my hometown. Think I'll buy it up with my good charm. Buy myself a dog to be my best of friend. There's $1 million house up for sale back in my hometown. Think I'll buy it up with my good charm. Buy myself a dog to